welcome to Access. My name is Marco and this is Bethany.
Hello.
Hello. And we want to welcome tonight, we're going to have a special guest. If everyone would welcome Chris Villasana. Go ahead and come on up, guys. Make sure you got some volume there. Thank you, thank you. All right. Well, Chris has been around the world pretty much. He's been in 16 countries over, these last few years, and just recently came back from Switzerland. And I wanted you guys to hear, just a little bit about his ministry and what he's all about. And Chris, what have you been seeing lately in Switzerland?
Well, in Switzerland, it's funny because all over across Europe, the idea of God is so different. Like, for instance, everybody, they have beliefs, but they're given beliefs by the government. Like whenever they're born, they're given paperwork saying that you're a Catholic, or that you're a Protestant, or if you go through a lot of paperwork difficulties, you can get it to say that you're nothing and stuff like that. But you have to pay taxes to that religion. So whenever you go and you're, like talking to these people, and we're like, sharing our testimony with them, and like we're telling about Jesus, and we're like, yeah, you can have a personal relationship with the living God. And they're like, what? It's like, well, what we're trying to say is that Jesus loves you, and He came and He died for you. And they had never heard Bible scriptures, they'd never seen the Bible, they'd never heard the gospel before, and all because they had just grown up in this atmosphere of, like secular religion. And so, it never crossed their mind that, the gospel was a living reality. It was something that could totally affect and influence their lives, having a relationship with Jesus Christ. So that was a totally different atmosphere than speaking about here in America.
Right. Okay, Beth, you've been in Ireland before, and to Africa. Do you relate any of that similarities there, or culturally?
Yes, definitely. In Ireland, a lot of their, they just have grown up with religion that so much that it's become so dead to them. Like, it's become not, especially in Southern Ireland where I was, it's a lot about Catholicism. And there's no relationship. They don't understand it at all. And the sad thing is, because they've had it so much a part of their lives, it's like they don't care to know any more about it. Whereas if you go to like a third world country where they've never heard it of Jesus, they're more able to receive it and accept it. But America is becoming a lot more like Ireland and European countries where it's just becoming dead here too.
Yeah, actually, a friend of mine, the Lord gave us word whenever we were over there that it was only going to be like 3 or 4 more generations before we had that same exact spiritual atmosphere where all of the forework and the foundation that had been set up by the gospel would just be totally torn back down into secularness of spirituality.
Yeah, yeah, and we can see that today. We see, what Congress is doing about simple things like prayer in school, Pledge of Allegiance. We're talking about, being able to have any kind of study or adding, Jesus into our history, and it's really interesting, to get that perspective from another culture and to see how different it is from what we're used to. We're used to going to church on Sunday, and that's just a part of us. And so to hear about somebody that is like, why would I want a relationship with, somebody else? I got friends already,
Yeah, that's right.
But anyhow, okay, let me push forward a little bit. Chris, you told me that you were going to be heading to Mexico pretty soon. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, whenever I was in about 12 different countries whenever I was in Europe itself. So what I found out was that languages were so easy to learn whenever you could just be around them and absorb them. And so I actually got really confused with my languages. Like English became less and less of a language, and different German words were starting to pick up in my vocabulary, and French words. So I would try to ask somebody if they spoke English, and I would ask them in about 3 or 4 different languages. But whenever I came back, the Lord let me know that I wasn't going to be in my home for very much longer. As soon as I got back there, He was going to send me back out again. And I prayed, and I said, Lord, I think Spanish would be so easy to learn, if I could just be around it. And, because, my dad was first language Spanish, but he didn't speak Spanish to me. So I prayed, and I said, Lord, if you'll send me to Mexico and learn Spanish, I think that'd just be great. you know? And then 3 days later, I get a phone call from a friend who's a resident in Mexico who I had met doing a mission trip to India. And they called me and offered me a job opportunity, a place to stay, and everything that I needed to live down there so I could learn Spanish. And so I was like, all right, Lord, we're going to go tell the Mexicans about Jesus.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Well, I think, you know, we had a few, how many, raise your hands real quick, how many guys went to Mexico? We had 1, 2, let's see, we just had a recent trip to Africa. Who all went on that trip? You went, is there just one here? Okay, so we had a few people that have been out, you know, into other cultures and seen the ministry there and see, you know, how God is in those other countries. So, you know, it's really interesting and really a life-changing thing for you to experience. And, you know, we're talking about doing, you know, ministry here, and because it's something that we're used to, but when you go and immerse yourself in another, you know, culture, it's, and that just, you know, it really helps you to see, you know, where your faith is, and in relation, a lot of times it just spurs you harder to say, like, you know, I don't want that in my home, you know, I want to.
That's right.
You know, I want that to be the first thing. But okay, Chris has been. Give us a few names of the places that you've been lately these last few years.
Well, whenever I graduated from high school, I backpacked up into Canada and then down into Mexico. And whenever I got back from that, after about a month or two, I was in India for a very small season. And then I came back from that, and then I was working with a missionary organization, actually here in the local area in Lake Jackson. And from there, I went and I was living in Chicago for a brief period of time. And in Chicago, we did street evangelism, all different kinds of things. And that's what my life has been focused around, is out sharing the gospel with people and doing street evangelism. And so after Chicago, coming back down from that, I headed off towards Europe after a couple of months. And I was living in different parts of Europe for over a period of only about 2 months. And during that 2 months, I was in Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Austria, Germany, Hungary, Romania, Sweden, Italy, France, Belgium, Spain, and England.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Did you ever see Chris walking with the cross around here before?
Yeah, I told Ksenia, like, I saw him just like, I was going, I already met him, but I was going around to like the mall, and I was like, is that Chris? And there he was just standing there with a huge wooden cross. It was like the size of what they really would have used,
right.
You know, the big ones.
Yeah.
And
can you tell us a little bit about that ministry? And what
Actually, I met this older gentleman at this pizza place, and he, you know, like, he heard me sharing my testimony with some people there, and he was like, "Hey, you radical for Jesus?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure I am." You know, he goes, "All right, well, let's go walk the cross." And I was like, "What does that mean?" You know, so I, you know, I went out. We met in Surfside, and he had this huge wooden cross, and I was like, "What the heck?" And so he just put it on his shoulder, and we started walking down the jetty, and, you know, like, we were just passing out tracts, and people were like double taking and looking at it and coming and asking us questions like, "Man, this is great." So me and my friends built one, and we started walking it up and down the highways, and people would pull off the highways crying and coming and giving their lives to Jesus and asking for prayer and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, "Whoa, this is awesome." And, you know, like, people would really freak out. I mean, like, we got just so many opportunities to witness to, you know, like, gangs and all kinds of stuff, because they just had no idea how to react to these crazy people who had these, you know, what was the funniest thing was people would pull over and they're like, "You guys need a ride?" And we're like, "No, thanks." Like, "What are you guys here?" "Well, we're telling people about Jesus." Or some people would ask us, "You guys making fun of Jesus?" And we're like, "Oh, come on, who would go that far out of their way to make fun of Jesus?" No, but it's been such an effective opportunity to share the gospel in such a powerful way.
Right. There's a couple of things that, you know, I want to bring up, and one of the things is, you know, some of the opportunities that you got to believe the Lord for things, and you know what He provided for you. And we're going to go ahead and take a quick break and come back to it. But let's guys hear it for Chris. Awesome.